And I am live, I think. I'm live and my light is not very bright. That's the best we're going to get. It's my other light. I can find somewhere else to plug it in. Again, things I should have done before starting this. Hello, we got 2 people here. Hello. I had to have something to eat. That's why the stream is really late today. Fitz sneezed. Oh my god. It was incredible. Okay. If we put the... If we plug this in... No, there's no way to plug that in. Stupid. If we... Yeah, we did D&D and then I needed to get food, is what I meant. Just not thinking. My brain isn't happening to me. Or for me, or with me, or whatever. Would this work? Whoops, nope. Just trying to rig up a way that I can plug this into a USB port that is not right under my face. Yay! See? Too bright. There's too much going on. Getting completely blinded every time I look up. But yeah, today we're doing the white people, which I should have given content warnings for, but I didn't. I forgot to. And I forgot what the content warnings actually would be. So... blinded by the light. I'm going to make it contract my pupils so my eyes go scary. Didn't work. Never mind. Okay, that's spookier anyway. That's fine. Uh-oh. I just blinded myself and now I can't see the page. So basically the story of the white people is your face is beautiful. So the white people is basically the story of a young girl's diary. Her nurse, by which I mean her, governess, caregiver kind of thing, teaches her folklore and magic and the old ways. So yeah, there's content. There's stuff in it. And also a warning that we will be reading a young girl's diary, which is basically a really long, strong stream of consciousness, so you might get bored. How long do you think we should wait? I got some mascara under my eye. I'm sorry, that's so much less than professional of me. That's what makes me unprofessional, not the fact that I refuse to edit my videos. Aha. Pepsi Max. The forbidden bev. I'm trying to drink less of that. Not cut it out, just drink less. So, it's a good point. All my mistakes make everything better because that's CEO mindset. If people don't have CEO mindset or business excellence, then that's. Although I watched a video the other day of a girl, she like dissects movies in a funny way, and she was doing Crossroads by Britney Spears, and she fucking edited herself into the movie, and I was just about crying laughing. And I thought, when I get the equipment to do that and the know-how, I'm going to do it all the time. It's going to become a problem and funny to nobody but me. I will try and link it. I think if you search for sort of Crossroads, Britney Spears, that kind of thing. Let me find the tab. Okay, Crossroads, Britney Spears' original cry for help, makeup, and movies by Jamie French. Jamie French, I've seen a few videos of hers and she is funny. And we're at like the 7-minute mark, so we might as well just leap in. I don't think we're going to get a massive influx of people. I think streaming at about 4 or 5 is probably much better for a lot of people. So we are going to say hello to the people in the future who are watching this, jumping around in time. Hello to future people. You weren't here live. You missed it. And we're going to crack on. The White People by Arthur Markin, whose name I still haven't looked up and don't know how to pronounce. Prologue. Sorcery and sanctity, said Ambrose. These are the only realities. Each is an ecstasy, a withdrawal from the common life. Cotgrave listened, interested. He had been brought by a friend to this mouldering house in a northern suburb, through an old garden to the room where Ambrose the recluse dozed and dreamed over his books. Yes, he went on, magic is justified of her children. There are many, I think, who eat dry crusts and drink water with a joy infinitely sharper than anything within the experience of the practical epicure. You are speaking of the saints. Yes, and of the sinners too. I think you are falling into the very general error of confining the spiritual world to the supremely good. But the supremely wicked necessarily have their portion in it. The merely carnal, sensual man can no more be a great sinner than he can be a great saint. Most of us are just indifferent, mixed-up creatures. We muddle through the world without realizing the meaning and the inner sense of things, and consequently our wickedness and our goodness are alike second-rate, unimportant. So you can see where the Victorians were upset already. And you think the great sinner, then, will be an ascetic, as well as the great saint. Great people of all kinds forsake the imperfect copies and go to the perfect originals. I have no doubt but that many of the very highest among the saints have never done a good action, using the words in their ordinary sense. And, on the other hand, there have been those who have sounded the very depths of sin, who all their lives have never done an ill deed. Victorians at this point are just... they're acting like 14-year-olds who just saw The Matrix, except they're scared. He went out of the room for a moment, and Cotgrave, in high delight, turned to his friend and thanked him for the introduction. He's grand, he said. I never saw that kind of lunatic before. Nice language for a guy whose host you are and his guest in his home with you, where you are, which is you're a guest. That told him. Ambrose returned with more whiskey and helped the two men in a liberal manner. He abused the teetotal sect with ferocity as he handed the seltzer, and pouring out a glass of water for himself, was about to resume his monologue, when Cockgrave broke in. I can't stand it, he said. Your paradoxes are too monstrous. A man may be a great sinner and yet never do anything sinful. Come. You're quite wrong, said Ambrose. I never make paradoxes. I wish I could. I merely said that a man may have exquisite taste in Romanée Conti and yet never even smelt foul for ale. That's all, and it's more like a truism than a paradox, isn't it? I'm guessing Romanée Conti is really good ale. Your surprise at my remark is due to the fact that you haven't realized what sin is. Oh yes, there is a sort of connection between sin with the capital letter and actions which are commonly called sinful, with murder, theft, adultery, and so forth. Much the same connection that there is between the ABC and fine literature. But I believe that the misconception, it is all but universal, arises in great measure from our looking at the matter through social spectacles. We think that a man who does evil to us and to his neighbours must be very evil. So he is, from a social standpoint. It says for ale, like F-O-U-R. Maybe it's a typo of a foul ale. Don't know why. Don't know. Evil in its essence is a lonely thing, a passion of the solitary individual soul. Really, the average murderer, qua murderer, is not by any means a sinner in the true sense of the word. He is simply a wild beast that we have to get rid of to save our own necks from his knife. I should class him rather with tigers than with sinners. Seems a little strange. I thought. The murderer murders not from positive qualities, but from negative ones. He lacks something which non-murderers possess. Evil, of course, is wholly positive, only it is on the wrong side. You may believe me that sin in its proper sense is very rare. It is probable that there have been far fewer sinners than saints. Yes, your standpoint is all very well for practical social purposes. We are naturally inclined to think that a person who is very disagreeable to us must be a very great sinner. It is very disagreeable to have one's pocket picked, and we pronounce the thief to be a very great sinner. In truth, he is merely an undeveloped man. He cannot be a saint, of course, but he may be, and often is, an infinitely better creature than thousands who have never broken a single commandment. He is a great nuisance to us, I admit, and we very properly lock him up if we catch him. But between his troublesome and unsocial action and evil, the connection is of the weakest. So you see why people were upset about this. It was getting very late. The man who had brought Cockgrave had probably heard all this before, since he assisted with a bland and judicious smile. Cockgrave began to think that his lunatic was turning into a sage. Do you know, he said, you interest me immensely. Do you think, then, that we do not understand the real nature of evil? No, I don't think we do. We overestimate it and we underestimate it. We take the very numerous infractions of our social bylaws, the very necessary and very proper regulations which keep the human company together, and we get frightened at the prevalence of sin and evil. But this is really nonsense. Take theft, for example. Have you any horror at the thought of Robin Hood, of the Highland Caterans of the 17th century, of the moss troopers, of the company promoters of our day? Then, on the other hand, we underrate evil. We attach such an enormous importance to the sin of meddling with our pockets and our wives that we have quite forgotten the awfulness of real sin. And what is sin? Said Cotgrave. I think I must reply to your question by another. What would your feelings be, seriously, if your cat or your dog began to talk to you and to dispute with you in human accents? I had a dream where that happened. It was horrifying. You would be overwhelmed with horror, I'm sure of it. And if the roses in your garden sang a weird song, you would go mad. And suppose the stones in the road began to swell and grow before your eyes. And if the pebble that you noticed at night had shot out stony blossoms in the morning. Well, these examples may give you some notion of what sin really is. Look here, said the third man, hitherto placid. You two seem pretty well wound up, but I'm going home. I've missed my tram and I shall have to walk. So, fuck him. He's out of here. He's gone. Ambrose and Cotgrave seemed to settle down more profoundly when the other had gone out into the early misty morning and the pale light of the lamps. Speak of the devil. Gonna draw the curtain, hey? That's better. You astonish me, said Cotgrave. I had never thought of that. If that is really so, one must turn everything upside down. Then the essence of sin really is, and the taking of heaven by storm, it seems to me, said Ambrose. It appears to me that it is simply an attempt to penetrate into another and higher sphere in a forbidden manner. You can understand why it is so rare. There are few indeed who wish to penetrate into other spheres, higher or lower, in ways allowed or forbidden. Men, in the mass, are amply content with life as they find it. Therefore, there are few saints, and sinners, in the proper sense, are fewer still. And men of genius, who partake sometimes of each character, are rare also. Yes, on the whole, it is perhaps harder to be a great sinner than a great saint. There is something profoundly unnatural about sin. Is that what you mean? Exactly. Holiness requires as great, or almost as great, an effort. But holiness works on lines that were natural once. It is an effort to recover the ecstasy that was before the fall. Capital F. But sin is an effort to gain the ecstasy and the knowledge that pertain alone to angels. And in making this effort, man becomes a demon. I told you that the mere murderer is not therefore a sinner. That is true. But the sinner is sometimes a murderer. Gilles de Rais is an instance. So you see that while the good and the evil are unnatural to man as he now is, to man the social, civilized being, evil is unnatural in a much deeper sense than good. The saint endeavours to recover a gift which he has lost. The sinner tries to obtain something which was never his. In brief, he repeats the fall. Capital F, fall. And as for Gilles de Rais, you can look him up on Wikipedia. He was a companion in arms to Joan of Arc. Very, holy and all that. And then in his middle age, he did some extremely horrific murders of children. So, probably don't Google him. Not worth it. But are you a Catholic? Said Cotgrave. Yes, I am a member of the persecuted Anglican Church. I thought they were different, but okay. Then how about these texts which seem to reckon as sin that which you would set down as a mere trivial dereliction? Yes, but in one place the word sorcerers comes in the same sentence, doesn't it? That seems to me to give the keynote. Consider, Can you imagine for a moment that a false statement which saves an innocent man's life is a sin? No. Very good then. It is not the mere liar who is excluded by those words. It is above all the sorcerers who use the material life, who use the failings incidental to material life as instruments to obtain their infinitely wicked ends. And let me tell you this, our higher senses are so blunted, we are so drenched with materialism, that we should probably fail to recognize real wickedness if we encountered it. But shouldn't we experience a certain horror, a terror such as you hinted we would experience if a rose tree sang, in the mere presence of an evil man? We should if we were natural. Children and women feel this horror you speak of. Even animals experience it. Children and women. Fuck you, Arthur. Thank you for creating a genre, but you know. But with most of us, convention and civilization and education have blinded and deafened and obscured the natural reason. No, sometimes we may recognize evil by its hatred of the good. One doesn't need much penetration to guess at the influence which dictated, quite unconsciously, the Blackwood Review of Keats. No idea. But this is purely incidental. And as a rule, I suspect that the hierarchs of Tophet pass quite unnoticed, or perhaps, in certain cases, as good but mistaken men. But you used the word unconscious just now of Keats's reviewers. Is wickedness ever unconscious? Always. It must be so. It is like holiness and genius in this as in other points. It is a certain rapture or ecstasy of the soul, a transcendent effort to surpass the ordinary bounds. So, surpassing these, it surpasses also the understanding, the faculty that takes note of that which comes before it. No, a man may be infinitely and horribly wicked and never suspect it. I'm looking at my cat. But I tell you, evil in this, its certain and true sense, is rare, and I think it is growing rarer. Hang on. I need to take a pill that I forgot, and if I don't do it right now, I will forget again. I am trying to get hold of it all, said Cotgrave. From what you say, I gather that the true evil... We're talking about the nature of evil. Sometimes evil is just bullshit under another name. No. Nope, that's empty. Don't know why I have that. Yes, here we go. Thank you. You're all part of my everyday life, isn't that intentional? Sip. I'm trying to get hold of it all, said Cotgrave. From what you say, I gather that the true evil differs generically from that which we call evil. Quite so. There is no doubt an analogy between the two, a resemblance such as enables us to use, quite legitimately, such terms as the foot of the mountain and the leg of the table. And sometimes, of course, the two speak, as it were, in the same language. The rough miner or puddler, the untrained, undeveloped tiger man, heated by a quart or two above his usual measure, comes home and kicks his irritating and injudicious wife to death. He is a murderer, and Gilles de Rais was a murderer. But you see the gulf that separates the two. Oh, I'm glad I told you what he did. Now you know. The word, if I may so speak, is accidentally the same in each case. The meaning is utterly different. It is flagrant Hobson Jobson to confuse the two. Or rather, it is as if one supposed that the Juggernaut and the Argonauts had something to do etymologically with one another. And no doubt the same weak likeness or analogy runs between all the social sins and the real spiritual sins. And in some cases, perhaps, the lesser may be schoolmasters to lead one on to the greater, from the shadow to the reality. If you are anything of a theologian, you will see the importance of all this. I am sorry to say, remarked Cotgrave, that I have devoted very little of my time to theology. Indeed, I have often wondered on what grounds theologians have claimed the title of Science of Sciences for their favourite study, since the theological books I have looked into have always seemed to me to be concerned with feeble and obvious pieties, or with the kings of Israel and Judah. I do not care to hear about those kings. Ambrose grinned. We must try to avoid theological discussion, he said. God damn it. Turn. Do it properly. Thank you. I perceive that you would be a bitter disputant. But perhaps the dates of the kings have as much to do with theology as the hobnails of the murderous puddler with evil. Then, to return to our main subject, you think that sin is an esoteric, occult thing? Yes. It is the infernal miracle, as holiness is the supernal. Now and then it is raised to such a pitch that we entirely fail to suspect its existence. It is like the note of the great pebble pipes of the organ, which is so deep that we cannot hear it. In other cases, it may lead to the lunatic asylum, or to still stranger issues. But you must never confuse it with mere social misdoing. Remember how the apostle, speaking of the other side, distinguishes between charitable actions and charity. And as one may give all one's goods to the poor and yet lack charity, so remember one may avoid every crime and yet be a sinner. Your psychology is very strange to me, said Cotgrave, but I confess I like it. And I suppose that one might fairly deduce from your premises the conclusion that the real sinner might very possibly strike the observer as a harmless personage enough. Certainly. Because the true evil has nothing to do with social life or social laws, or if it has, only incidentally and accidentally. It is a lonely passion of the soul, or a passion of the lonely soul, whichever you like. If, by chance, we understand it, and grasp its full significance, then, indeed, it would fill us with horror and with awe. But this emotion is widely distinguished from the fear and the disgust with which we regard the ordinary criminal, since this latter is largely or entirely founded on the regard which we have for our own skins or purses. We hate a murder because we know that we should hate to be murdered, or to have anyone that we like murdered. So, on the other side, we venerate the saints, but we don't like them as well as our friends. Can you persuade yourself that you would have enjoyed St. Paul's company? Do you think that you and I would have got on with Sir Galahad? So with the sinners as with the saints. If you met a very evil man and recognized his evil, he would no doubt fill you with horror and awe, but there is no reason why you should dislike him. On the contrary, it is quite possible that if you could succeed in putting the sin out of your mind, you might find the sin a capital company, and in a little while you might have to reason yourself back into horror. Still, how awful it is. If the roses and the lilies suddenly sang on this coming morning, if the furniture began to move in procession, as in de Maupassant's tale. I am glad we've come back to that comparison, said Cotgrave, because I wanted to ask you what it is that corresponds in humanity to these imaginary feats of inanimate things. In a word, what is sin? You have given me, I know, an abstract definition, but I should like a concrete example. Sounds like a pickup line, honestly. What is sin? Want you to show me. I'm tired. I'm sorry. I have told you it was very rare, said Ambrose, who appeared willing to avoid the giving of a direct answer. The materialism of the age, which has done a good deal to suppress sanctity, has done perhaps more to suppress evil. We find the earth so very comfortable that we have no inclination either for ascents or descents. It would seem as if the scholar who decided to specialize in Tophet would be reduced to purely antiquarian researches. No paleontologist could show you a live pterodactyl. And yet you, I think, have specialized, and I believe that your researches have descended to our modern times of the 1880s. You guys didn't know shit. I still don't know anything. You are really interested, I see. Well, I confess that I have dabbled a little. And if you like, I can show you something that bears on the very curious subject we have been discussing. Ambrose took a candle and went away to a far, dim corner of the room. Cotgrave saw him open a venerable bureau that stood there, and from some secret recess he drew out a parcel and came back to the window where they had been sitting. Ambrose undid a wrapping of paper and produced a green pocketbook. "You will take care of it," he said. "Don't leave it lying about. It is one of the choicer pieces in my collection, and I should be very sorry if it were lost." Sorry, I'm just popping this out to see if perhaps it's not updating. Or if you guys are just really interested in the nature of sin. It sounds sarcastic, but I actually am.